I want to jump to the story from the Anchorage Daily News, February 3rd. Alaska National Guard plans deployment to assist federal government on U.S.-Mexico border. I love it. I posted an image of this and someone said, who knew Alaska was so based? And everyone responded, Alaska assisting the feds is not based. No. And so the gist of the story is this. They're deploying a couple aircraft and 20 personnel to assist with the aircraft. They say it's routine. This is, they say, Major Ryan Wierzbicki, a spokesman for the U.S. Army's Joint Task Force North, said in a phone interview that Alaska Guard members would be sent to any of 4 states along the border, including Texas and Arizona. Federal requests for states to provide border assistance are issued regularly and have become routine. Now, I tweeted about this somewhat facetiously. I said, what do you call it when a National Guard is called up to go against another state's National Guard? And I got community noted on X, where it took selective excerpts from the article to obfuscate what's actually happening. It said they are not going against each other. I'm like, I asked the question intentionally to, not to state it definitively, but it is true. These individuals will be providing assistance to CBP in Texas as well as, but that does mean Texas. That does mean part of their deployment will put them up against Texas. I don't know how else to describe it. If Texas National Guard is saying no to CBP, back the F off, and you have no jurisdiction here, or we've cut you off from your jurisdiction, how in any way could you interpret any amount of National Guard being called in by the feds to a variety of states, which include Texas, anything other than they will be as part of the deployment against Texas National Guard? It also says, they also said it's a routine thing. Many people responded saying, it's totally routine. It's not that big a deal. Yo, it says in the article, the last time they did this was 2019. 5 years ago. Is not routine. No. Now, I'm not saying Joe Biden got on the phone and said, we need to bring the National Guard in to stop Texas. I'm saying it's a grain of sand in a heap. And the question is this the most tone-deaf move you could possibly make when the Texas National Guard has deployed armed soldiers to physically remove and bar federal agents from removing border barriers? Or was it an intentional CBP needs assistance because of what is happening with, look, I'll put it this way. I don't care what state they go to. CBP in Texas are completely at odds as to how to operate this. When we've had people who have reported on the ground at the border tell us, when Taylor Hansen was here, he said tens of thousands of people, it's chaos, there's litter. What happened after Texas took over? 3? Yeah. He said 4 to 6 maybe. And I said 1,000? He goes, no, 4 to 6, like 4, 5 or 6. And I was like, you mean like on my finger 4? Yeah, 4 people. I'm like, what? Yeah. So when CBP is facilitating human smuggling and then Texas steps in, what do you think it's going to mean that the Alaska National Guard is assisting them? It means these individuals who are providing assistance with aviation to the CBP will be at odds with the mission of the Texas National Guard. That's a fact. And I'll give you one more. Let me see if I can find this. I had this.
I'm surprised Alaska would send them, to be honest, in Dunleavy, because that state kind of already hates the Fed anyways.
Yeah, why would they do that?
They're like super. That's like one of those states that's actually pretty anti-federal.
I had the story pulled up. I lost it, but it's the Border Patrol Union supports the new border bill.
Yeah, because they're getting, there's a lot of pay increases and stuff for border guards there.
But the border bill, as we covered in a previous segment, does not have any security at all. It codifies 8,500 criminal aliens entering the country every day and gives them the funding, and it gives them more authority to adjudicate asylum claims without a judge. So of course they're for it. Do we want, let's say this law, look, they're planning on having this law probably pass. I doubt it'll happen, but if it did, and CBP is now in the legal, has legislatively been given the right to bring in 5,000 to 8,000 criminal aliens every day, and in some instances determine their asylum cases just right there, and they get work permits. Alaska National Guard is going to be helping them do that.
And that's still 3 million illegal immigrants a year, by the way, which is not a huge drop in what we're seeing currently. So it's not good.
None of this is acceptable.
No, I mean, it also, though, I mean, the border bill also has an increase in pay for asylum and border agents. Yeah. That's a big part of it.
So I'll point this out, too. In the community note, it said it has nothing to do with Operation Lone Star. That's exactly my point. Operation Lone Star is Texas's operation securing the border. This mobilization has nothing to do with that. It has to do with supporting Customs and Border Protection in what they do, which is the opposite of Operation Lone Star. And so they are trying really hard to downplay this move being made. I think we have to point this out because Alaskan Governor Mike Dunleavy actually joined 24 other GOP governors in support of Greg Abbott. Why now would he be like, okay, I guess? No. We put pressure on them and say, don't you dare. I don't care if it's 1, 5, or 20. I don't care if it's 200. We should say, no. CBP is facilitating human trafficking. Do not send support.
Yep.
It's all for show, though.
Did you see what Abbott said? He said that there had been 3,000 to 4,000 people coming across in a day, and now it's gone down to 3.
Yeah, it's wild. That's what he was
That's what Taylor Hansen was telling us. Taylor has gone down. Shout out to Tenet Media. He reports for Tenet. Taylor was saying that he was there during the peak of the crisis, and there's garbage and thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And then once Texas takes over, 4.
That's wild.
Yeah,
they've moved. If I understand correctly, they have moved the locations to places in New Mexico and Arizona. They've started to go into other states,
which also makes sense for this deployment. Texas is at odds with CBP. They have put up barriers in Operation Lone Star, shipping containers with razor wire all over them. So the criminal enterprise is shifting operations to other parts of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. So what? Alaska National Guard is going to go help the human smugglers, CBP, at the border in Arizona? That is still working against this country. It's worse than just working against Texas.
Yeah, and so like the 10th Amendment gives Texas the right to handle their own border situation anyways. I mean, at the end of the day,
the border bill would get rid of that.
Yes, exactly. That's the goal. I think that's the goal because the 10th Amendment gives them the right. And they've moved the deadline on the cutoff deadline from Biden 3 times now? Has it been like 3 times?
Because they can't do anything.
They can't do anything. The Constitution gives Texas the right to guard their own borders. They could guard their borders from any illegal invasion that they want to because it's not mentioned that power is strictly given to the federal government. So what does the 10th Amendment say? It says that anything not mentioned expressly for the federal government here in the Constitution is up to the states.
What is it? Article 4, Section 4 states that the federal government must defend from invasion.
Sure, yes.
Now you got this bill that the National Guard can respond with lethal force on the border.
Yeah, but they can litigate. They can litigate what is an invasion all day long for years.
My point is when you've got photos and videos of human traffickers with rifles to the point where a Republican has proposed a bill that would allow the National Guard to use lethal force against these individuals, I'm like, I kind of think when they're smuggling humans with weapons into our country, and many of them are flying the flag of their home country, and like they have guns, I would call that an invasion.
Sure.
Did you guys see Brett Weinstein talk to Tucker Carlson? He went down to the Darien Gap, which is this area south of, I think, southern Panama, between South
the most dangerous,
like 60 miles of jungle, where this is like where most people meet their maker when they're trying to flee here. They go through the Darien. I don't know if most, but a lot of people die in that jungle. And he said he saw camps. Lots of camps, and they were very friendly. One in particular, very friendly, and they let him in, and he was talking to people. They're fleeing economics. They're not fleeing political asylum.
Right. There's
economic asylum, which is not, U.S. government, first of all, is not supposed to take people for economic asylum. It's not a real thing because it displaces our own economics. Secondly, then Brett's like, and then I went to this camp, and it was a Chinese camp, and they wouldn't let us anywhere near it, and they were what I would call hostile.
Wow.
He's like, so what I think is happening is that there is an economic migration happening, but it's masking an invasion.
Think of it like this. I think there's a good chance of that.
Yeah, there's something that people that we don't talk about or people don't bring up much that I heard someone discussing today was the one-child policy in China that went on from the 70s, I think it was.
Until just a couple years ago.
Until recently. Yeah. There are, probably a couple, and I'm probably not exaggerating, but I don't know for sure, but I imagine it's probably a couple 100 million young men that have nothing to do and no women.
That's
China
right.
needs to do something with these guys
because
dudes,
women were aborted on top of everything else. Little girls were aborted before they could be born.
Yeah, and so these guys, young men that have nothing to do, they start civil wars. They cause all the problems societies run into. It's always young men that have nothing to do and don't have women. They don't have families.
I want to clarify we got a super chat, so I want to give some clarification because they're pointing out that it says potentially deployed in early 2025. I think it's important that people know that, but I don't think it changes anything that we're talking about right now. It's tone deaf right now to make this announcement. And the other thing we talked about early in this segment is the point of the border security bill. One strong point is that, and why they're starting wars, They want to make sure that whatever happens, if Donald Trump gets elected, they steamroll through what they want with or without him and lock him in place so he can't change anything about it. Announcing this deployment early means that if Trump does get in office, he'll have a harder time stopping it from happening.
Can we talk about how crazy it is that we're bombing Iraq again for 33 years and we want to open the border completely? I mean, we've destabilized so many regions in the Middle East, and we're like, yeah, come on in. It's totally cool. No one's going to worry.
And also when people come in, right, we have this part of our culture now is to tell everyone that America sucks and everything that America stands for is bad, and that the culture
part of whose culture?
That's part of American culture right now.
Not my culture. Yeah.
Well, that's part of the culture of the nation in which we were born and raised. That culture has been taken over by really bad actors who hate America and hate Americans.
Revolution.
It's a cultural revolution. And so we have people coming in, and you have all of these progressives saying, your culture is better than ours. So don't bother assimilating. Don't learn English. Don't learn our values. Don't become part of our culture. And that's not how it used to be when you had like the Ellis Island
You can call them you can call them what they are, Libby. They're communists.
Well,
it's the communists that did that.
You guys
there they are.
Love poker tables. It is... You will get kicked out for speaking any other language but English.
I have fun hanging out watching you guys play poker. Had fun.
Yuri Bezmenov warned us of this in the 80s. I mean, he defected from Russia and said, hey, the communists are taking over every single one of your institutions, your libraries, your schools, your government, museums, your hospitals,
all of the not-for-profits,
mental health care.
What about the banks?
But the only reason that matters...
Have they overtly taken over the banks?
Probably, yeah.
The only reason it matters that they did this is that we no longer go to church. But to be fair, the communists are taking over a lot of churches too.
Yeah, that too. I mean, there's a church right up the street from my house hanging a giant rainbow flag in front of the church. I said, "What is that?
Liberation theology."
Yeah, I'm like, what are you worshiping here, man? I mean, this is not.
I don't know. I moved to West Virginia, and the church I go to is full.
Yeah, I'm converting Orthodox currently because they're like the one church that hasn't cucked to the communists yet.
Do you go to that one that's like downtown Charlestown?
I don't want to say on air.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where do you go to church at?
See you there. Yeah, there's one that
see every Sunday with my child.
Right, Seamus would go there, and really nice. And I told the story of how like we were gonna go grab food, and Seamus was like, "Yeah, I got church, and I'll be at it this time." I was like, "Cool, we'll meet up." And I show up with my brother, and I'm just wearing my clothes, and I see these like little kids playing, and they're dressed very nicely, and I was like, "Man, something got lost."
Yes.
And it's not about, in my opinion, it's not about being Christian and believing in God, although I think there's a strong correlation between these things.
Community is huge.
Community and, what's the right word? I guess decorum, in a sense.
Decorum, community, manners, feeling like you're part of something. Like the church I went to in Brooklyn, where I really liked I liked the other people there. I taught CCD there, and I liked them, but they
what does that mean? Sorry, CCD.
CCD, I forget what it's called, but it's basically where you teach the kids Catholicism, and they go through all the sacraments. So they start young and they go through catechism. Yeah, you go
do the same
through
thing for Orthodox Church too.
Yeah, you go through all the sacraments. You have
CCD is so you can get confirmed as an adult
in the church. Yeah, but like you have
to do it for Orthodox
confession
Church
and communion and confirmation and blah blah blah. But it was very like. There was a Spanish mass that had all the families at it, and there were a ton of kids, and the whole mass was in Spanish. And then you had the English mass, which was just a lot of old people and hardly any kids. And we don't speak Spanish, so much the pity, I guess. And we would walk out of mass, and like all the families and kids were coming in, and like we weren't part of that mass. And I found it really frustrating. And I would say to the leadership of the church, we should do one giant bilingual mass, and parts of it are in Spanish and parts of it are in English. And they'd be like, well, we won't all understand what's going on. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if we know what's going on or not. The only thing that matters is that my kids and your kids are all hanging out, trying to get in trouble, playing under the pews. That's all that matters. That's what matters.
And that's the only thing they're doing to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. That's great. Like my son recently got in trouble because he was at CCD, and it turned out that he and his friend cut mass, like they do CCD and then they have mass.
Yeah.
And the mom, my son's friend's mom, called and was very upset that the boys had cut mass. And I'm thinking like, yes, that's important. They should not cut masks. That's a problem. I'm also thinking, this is great. This is great. Like, this is what you're doing?
Yeah.
You are rebelling by cutting masks. I'm thrilled. In Brooklyn, like, what are you doing? You're like getting high on the street corner and robbing people. Here you're cutting masks. This is perfect.
Big deal. Yeah. Well, I'll say this before we move on.
I hope he's not watching tonight.
I've been saying this for a while. You know, the communists, the two things they have to be at war with all the time is a strong family unit and faith, right? Because when you have those strong ideals in your family or in your church community, then you don't just automatically cut to the communists. You don't say, "Oh, we need this collectivism to save us," right?
But what was it? Video games or TV? Because it was like the '90s when things started to fall apart. Because that's when people started to go. When I started to go inward, I could play a game by myself for 10 hours alone without talking to someone. I had books before that, but if I ever played with toys like Legos or Micro Machines, it was way better to have a second person to play with. A book, obviously, I was always alone, and it didn't make me communist. But video games made me very disconnected from human. And then a lot of online games, it's not about being kind. It's about like talking shit online. Yeah.
Well, that's what the schoolyard is too. The kids are talking shit.
The mid 2000s Call of Duty.
Not too bad.
None of the stuff.
Is it video games? And I don't want to.
I don't think it is video games.
Why are people so disconnected?
It's in the schools. It was
the schools.
All of the stuff, all of the socialization stuff, all of the basically all the socialist influence that we have now. It's all in the schools. It started in the 80s, and that was when it first kind of took root.
Peggy McIntosh's Invisible Knapsack in 1989.
What's his name? Paulo Freire and the pedagogy of the oppressed and stuff.
All of that trash.
All of this stuff became the predominant way that teachers learn. So this stuff got into the schools that teach teachers. So that means that every teacher,
and then all those teachers went all over the country. So they're in Oklahoma,
exactly.
And they're in Nebraska,
these teachers,
and Idaho.
these teachers are the teachers that teach the teachers, right? So that you get it at the very source. You get them into an ideology that is based on an oppressor-oppressed dynamic, and you can apply that however you want. You can apply it by race, you can apply it by gender, you can apply it by any way you want. But once you get that framework into the education of an entire generation, it just starts pumping out people that are ideologically possessed, that have the same worldview, which is it is our job, it is government's job, it is our job, it is society's job to make things equal. And that's why you get people that want equity. You want to have people that have equal outcomes, and that's just turns into socialism.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.